when I started to see the feeds of this story, I didn't know if this was true or not. You know how social media is. There's a lot of misinformation. So I did a little digging and I came across a number of articles, and it turns out that it was true. Now see, here's the thing. The most recent story I could find on this was back in September of the previous year, quote unquote. Most of the stories were about a year ago. And I know these were all being floated out as proposals or ideas, suggestions or recommendations, but I don't know if anything has actually changed, even with the government shutdown. I don't know if this is something that 45 could do with executive order, since that the appropriations or the legislation is already out there for the programs in general, and simply change how it's delivered, but still using the same funds. I'm not sure. Now, I read an article on this that was about a year old from NPR, just kind of putting into context food box programs and how they've been used in the past. They specifically focus on the Indians who live on the reservations as far as food boxes. But everything that was highlighted, I'm sure would affect any community regardless of the circumstance. Now, the type of food that's been used in these food box programs have been things like powdered milk, dried food, processed food, canned food, processed meats. You know, if there are fruits and vegetables, all of the fruits and vegetables are processed, not fresh. Things like, you know, soups and ramen noodles that are canned, nothing fresh. You know, just shelf food, non-perishable, as they would say, processed food. Nothing fresh and a very high nutritional value. And that talking about, well, if you just eat a diet like that all the time, it will be unhealthy for you, especially if certain people already to begin with have certain health issues. Now, I will say, over the years, especially my first employee job, starting as a teenager, was at a grocery store. So I've seen how the EBT program has been used. But over the years, I've even had ideas of how you could reform some of these programs and make it more, say, to something like WIC. Now, WIC is intended for, you know, women and young children. I believe it stands for women, infants, and children or something like that. Now, with WIC, it's a voucher program, and there are certain types of foods that are approved. Now, I'm not saying that the types of foods or the items that are pre-approved for WIC are necessarily good quality or high nutritional value, because a lot of those foods would be similar, like some of the canned juices and powdered milk instead of fresh milk or even a mother's milk. A lot of it was really no different. But the concept of the plan, because see, what I would do, my recommendation would be, you take fresh fruits and vegetables, you take fresh meats. You know, you're not talking about any high-end cuts, but it doesn't have to be the lowest stuff, say like a chuck beef or a very fatty beef, you know, but, you know, chicken, turkey, things that could be lean, things that could be nutritious, you know, leaner cuts of beef, but basic level stuff. It's not going to be anything that's, you know, 5-star dining. It's not anything that's going to be high-end luxury cuisine, you know, but it's not going to be base level, you know, byproduct and processed types of food. Something where people could get nutritional value. And either you know, pre-prepare it in some kind of boxing or packaging like in a food bank, or you use it like a voucher system like WIC, where, hey, there's certain items in the stores or the retailers, or if it is a food bank or something like that, that is already pre-approved. And when you do the transaction, and you can do all of this electronically through the computer system and through the database, if someone selects an item that's not pre-approved, then the transaction won't go through, and they would have to get something that is approved, because that's how it is with the WIC program. If everyone is, and like I said, I would digitize it, not depend upon, human decision making or human data entry to determine those things. And that's how we had it in the grocery store chain that I worked at. Now I understand that the people who are making these policies, I understand that they're not compassionate. I understand that they don't really care about people, and I don't care who they are, particularly if it's poor people. And we're talking about the people who actually need the assistance and are trying to do the right thing, not people who are abusing the system. And I'll get into that also. But like I said, over the years, I've thought of ways of making reforms to how you can improve the program and make it better, where people who actually need the help will still get the help that they need. But it's only supposed to provide basic sustenance and basic nourishment and nutrition and health. It's not supposed to be extravagant. It's not supposed to be in excess, or a treat or anything like that. It's just basic nourishment and nutrition, so you can survive, so you can provide for your family, so people can be fed, so they're not starving, and so they don't have health conditions, and then when you get back on your feet, then you won't need that type of support anymore. And we do have people, I would like to think it's only a small percentage. We do have people who abuse the system. Now, they may still abuse it in this situation because it would still be free food, even though you would take a lot of choice out of their hands. But I'm sure, because with these EBT cards, now people can go to restaurants. They can get prepared meals instead of food that you would have to take home or prepare yourself. They get warm food, cooked food. These EBT cards, they can use just like a debit card, So I know people were talking about the nutritional value, but and I'm not sure if any of these fast food chains approve or accept EBT cards. But let's just say if someone takes an EBT card and uses it for fast food, well, what type of nutritional value would that be when you compare it to the processed food that would be in grocery stores on a shelf in some kind of cans or jars or pre-packaging, And another good thing to mention too, whether if it's SNAP or WIC, baby food is another one of those. I mentioned the formula instead of the mother's milk, or maybe even some other healthier alternative that the milk doesn't come from the mother, but not powdered milk. But most of these traditional baby foods that are in jars, it's maybe not that much better than some of this other processed food that you would find on the shelf. But like I said, when the policymakers, the politicians, the people in charge, the powers that be, when they're controlling these things, and when they've shown time and time again, they don't care about people. They don't care about us. They don't care about the poor. None of this should be a surprise, whether there is a government shutdown or if there's not a government shutdown. And another thing I was reading in the article was that decades ago, when a lot of these food box programs started, it was mainly started because you had the agriculture community and the business lobbied the government and petitioned and said, hey, well, if these people need the food, they could buy food that we produce and we send it to these processors, and they put it into the stores, they put it into the chains, they put it into the retailers or the general stores, and then They make money, we make money, everyone makes money. The people will still get some kind of food, and it's a win-win. Now, we know pretty much annually and recently, the federal government ended up being able to approve the Farm Bill. And also what's been going on recently with this administration is the trade disputes, and certain agricultural commodities have been thrown into the mix when it's come to these trade disputes and trade arguments. So when I read that portion about the article, you know, it's making me think that if something has come to fruition with these proposals of these food boxes, that, because you know how these politicians do, they'll pass legislation, it'll have way too many pages, several pages, when the bills could be a lot simpler. And it will take you a team of lawyers and interns and paralegals to read through this stuff, to decipher everything. I wonder if in the Farm Bill particularly, if they snuck in the legislation saying, well, in the event of this, instead of doing EBT cards and how the SNAP program has been done recently, if changes can't be made to switch over to food boxes, and where the food is basically dispersed out some type of a way, or rationed out, or maybe like a voucher system or something like that. I'm not sure. But it is something to think about and something to ask. Now, once again, in everything that I searched for as far as credible news sources, so far it was only proposals, you know, not an actual change that has been made to my knowledge. So if there's anyone, you know, if you maybe know something more about anything that's changed, maybe the shutdown has affected something, I'm not sure. Like I say, I just wouldn't know, depending on how the legislation is, looking at the details. I don't know if this is something that could be done with a presidential executive order to make this change, and then the funds are being utilized still. The appropriation has already been made. But if anyone knows if there's been any change, any switch, you know, just leave a comment, you know, and let me know, or a link to something, maybe, you know, or if you have a news source or a news feed, and then maybe we could do some research on this and see where we're at this stage of the game. But I will have to say, for our community, the biggest thing in this that we need to take away from this is, and once again, this is what this channel is, this is what the primary objective is supposed to be. We need to place ourselves as a people in a position where we're not dependent upon big corporations, where we're not dependent upon chain grocery stores, and where we're certainly not dependent upon the government or these politicians. Because if they make the rules and they control the resources, you're screwed. If you have some resources that you can provide for your family, and you can provide for your community, you can even just simply provide for yourself, that puts you in a far better situation, you know. So I would encourage people, and this is one of the things that I want to work on with this platform and this network, I would encourage people to go to go to your local stores, go to a local retailer, go to a local nursery, or a farmer's market, or whatever the case is. You know, get you some seeds, get you some plants. You know, there's certainly foods you can grow in planted pots. You can set up indoor kind of greenhouse situations. There's different types of urban gardening and vertical, especially if you don't have the land. There's different types of urban gardening and vertical gardening that you can utilize to grow your own food. You know, I've been looking into these systems over the past few years. Or if you do have the land, or if you have a homestead or something like that, look into either growing planted pots outdoors, maybe building a little, I mean, you'd be surprised, you could build a greenhouse with just PVC pipe and some thick plastic. You know, it doesn't take thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to build a very basic greenhouse. You could build a greenhouse with just those basic simple materials of PVC pipe, which is very inexpensive, and the plastic. And you can have your own greenhouse. And it could be a weekend project, or you take them maybe like a few days off if you have the vacation time to use. And this is something that you can do if you have the land, if you have the ability to do so. If you have a homestead, you know, you can build, or you can grow things in the ground. You could do raised beds, outdoors in a greenhouse. There's different methods of vertical gardening you could do as well, or even hydroponic gardening as another option. And especially if you're limited on a space, you know, and if you don't have the space to spread out all of these different crops, then you can grow your own food. But especially if we're in a position where we can cultivate our own neighborhoods, get some of our land, grow our own food, because we don't have a food corridor. You know, I mean, named an Afro-owned business dealing with livestock or agriculture or fisheries or some type of a vineyard or anything like that, that is owned by us. We don't have it. So since we don't own these things necessarily as far as a large-scale company level or a corporate level, then these things are going to have to be more personal, independent private ownership, or community-based. If you're able to do these things by yourself and your family, that's fine. But even a better situation if you could do it as a community. A fellowship group, a community. You know, one thing I liked that Michelle Obama did was the community gardens. You know, that's a good start. And there's lots of different communities across the country because of that effort where they've set up their own community gardens. People are learning how to grow their own things. They're teaching their children how to grow. People having a relationship with nature and the labor and that sweat equity, and being able to provide your own nourishment, to be independent, to be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and to not have to be dependent upon others. So stories like these, I look at these as teachable moments. You know, I know people can look at the headlines and they can say, oh, this is terrible, or that's bad, or that's not right. And yeah, that's true. But we can gawk and point or get upset, get emotional. You can react all different types of ways, but I'm all about solutions, okay? And anything that I can use as a teachable moment, anything I could use as a positive, I'm going to try to find that. So, like I say, take the time to research these things, regardless of what your living situation is, what geographical location you may be in. And like I say, if anyone knows that if there's been any changes in the SNAP programs or some of these other food assistance programs, you know, just drop a comment, let me know, maybe provide a link, and we'll check up on this story and see where it goes.